All right. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Imuna, and I pray everyone is doing well. If you have been following along, I want to first say, oh, praise be to the Creator. I've kind of been letting the videos do the talking for the last few uploads. Shout out to those on YouTube as well as those who are here on Facebook. So if you've been following along, now is the time to share your thoughts. What are your thoughts and your experience in walking through the information? What's going on, Nasha? Did you learn anything? Did it spark any interest in you to pursue your own family history? I can only speak from my perspective. I feel most authentic when I'm sharing with the public that which I do or that which I don't desire to do. You understand what I'm saying? So 9 times out of 10, if you see me talking about something, I'm quietly working on my portion to apply to my life behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Because I think that we live in a world where what's trending and what's the in thing to do consumes the mind so much that the more you chase the carrot is the further you get away from who you are and what it is that you're supposed to be doing, what's going on, truthful perspective. And so even though it may not be something that's going to garner all of the attention, I think it has value in the same way that whoever recorded and uploaded all of this information, just waiting for the day that someone would find it valuable. I want to thank those people as well. So for those who don't know what in the world I'm talking about, this is a 5-part series. I'm going to categorize it over on YouTube in a playlist and put them in order. A 5-part series of me narrating the information that I found as it related to my maternal grandfathers. And what sparked me was, if you've been following along, my computer crashed like 2 weeks ago. Like literally fell on the floor and crashed. And there was so much information on there, and me, doing so much research about other people's lives, other people's existence, but I think it's very important, right? I think it's very important to just know history in general. But personally, I've been collecting this data for a really long time. And when it crashed, it just let me know if I could still be heard. When it crashed, it was just a reality check. Sometimes we need things to put things in life into perspective so that we can move forward in what it is that we need to do. I'm going to open the mic as well as if anybody has anything to say. Over on YouTube is where the mic is going to be open if you're on Facebook. So I'm going to open the mic. I have family members. I didn't just do this for my own family, even though, the benefit is there. It's really just, I could have just done it and not shared it, but I think the value in it is that if we embark on such a journey, if we go on this journey of self-discovery to know thyself, there's so much that we can learn along the way that can give us the answers if we're the type that has these kind of questions. Because some people really don't care, like, oh, that's old stuff, why are you digging that up? That person or that mentality is not necessarily at the space that they would appreciate something of this nature, right? And then you see the New Testament text that says, don't cast your pearl before swine. It is really just some people, even though they may be within your soul family, may not be ready to face these hard truths or hard realities. Because what you're going to find when you go digging in the past to a certain degree may not be what you thought of yourself or what you want to face with at this time in your life, right? And for those type of people, they don't find benefit in something such as this. But I am a consummate truth seeker, right? Even at the expense of what some would feel is comfortable, right? I am not someone who likes to live in a state of ignorance, so to say, just so that we can basically go along to get along. I kind of want to get to the crux of the matter. Like, where is that smell coming from? Where is that issue coming from? Why am I experiencing what I'm experiencing? These are the type of self-discovery questions that if we ask and if we're committed to the journey, it can take us beyond what we may be experiencing right now. So yeah, I put the link in the box if anybody has any questions or comments at this time. There is more that I have to revisit. But this one, I think I'm going to put together in something that's flipping so that they can see all of the pieces of paper. Sometimes we think that the only people who family it matters, right? That has value is some celebrity. So you'll see on certain channels, PBS, different channels like this, they'll go to celebrities to trace their genealogy, right? They'll go to Henry Louis Gates to find out where your parents came from. And we watch that and we're like, ooh, wow. But sometimes we don't think to do it for ourselves because we are living in a world where we are told that our value comes from how many people know you, right? And if no one knows you, then the person internalizes, well, who will care? Your people will care eventually, you know what I mean? And if not, you should care because this is about you navigating life, right? So essentially, I've learned a lot. I don't think I can even. It's just a tip of the iceberg. What I've been able to become even more proficient at is identifying patterns. Identifying patterns. And I became in this research, and I'm talking about a lot of hours of research. This is not just for those who are interested. For those, you may have somebody in your family right now. There's always one or two who this has become their obsession, right? They're it, in the duck goose game, they're it. And they may have a lot of information that you don't even know they have. And it's just simply asking them or asking around to see who this may interest, because unbeknownst to you, they may be already, part-time doing this research. Right. So I think that is something also sometimes we get enamored with the feelings of, wow, that would be cool. Right. But I think to push beyond how cool something would be, to really know the reason why you're looking for what you're looking for will help to continue when it's no longer easy. Right? When you're frustrated, when you don't understand what it means, when you find out some information that is uncomfortable, like even in this storyline, at this particular storyline, I found out a lot of things that were like, wow, are you serious? And grappled with trying not to judge based on where we are now and looking at the situation for where they were then. So basically, if you're going to put yourself in their position, then you can't just sit where you are now in the what century are we in? 2022, and say armchair quarterback what you would not and what would and would not do. Like I shared an article here, and because I'm a researcher, even before this point, I think I employed some of those skills that I learned when researching, is to learn about that time period. Like when you read or watch a period piece, when someone writes a novel about a time period, or when somebody, like for instance, Underground, when they went to do that miniseries, Underground, they had to have historians or researchers research that time period so that you would experience what the people experienced with what they had access to. So I came across some paperwork about history at that time and the turning point at that time in the Caribbean and the United States for travel, and how in the late 1800s travel opened up, right? Travel opened up for the young people who were coming of age. And I think this is very important. It's kind of like how travel is opening up now for many children who were born in the millennium and after, and how getting the house and the car and the 3.5 children are not what they want right now. And therefore going all of that responsibility, the house and everything, to rent and travel, right? And so because the time period is changing, this generation is having a different experience, let's say, than the fathers and the mothers that came before and their grandparents. So I think historically it's important to look at, when I was kind of like ready to judge, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, okay, what is going on in the late 1800s that this many? Because when you look at the ship manifestos, When you look at what's going on, you can see who's traveling, where they're traveling from, where they're traveling to, and in some instances, why they're traveling. So what's going on, Queen T? One of the interesting things that I actually ordered 2 books. I couldn't help myself. I was like, man, look, I need to study the time period. But what I realized is that this is about 50 years post-slavery, right? I'm finding documentation from the 1880s to that's when my great grandfather was born, to the 1860s, to where my great great grandparents were born. And so in the Caribbean, what is happening, for those who may be interested in how I did this research, in case you want to do it for yourself, is that what is happening is that slavery is finished, but the plantocracy, the people who are running these plantations are not very pleased that the free labor source, okay, is drying up, and that these people who they just stole and subjugated are now expecting to be treated like normal people, right? And so they're kind of in their feelings about this, because the reality is there's a whole economy that's built on their labor, right? And so they're stuck between kind of a rock and a hard place. And what's happening is that by the 1880s, this is the children of those children who are like, I don't, if I stay here, I may end up like my grandparents. I may end up like my parents, who at this time, when I'm doing the research, on both sides respectively, they're having like 7, 8, 9 children, right? And so my great grandparents are amongst all of these children watching their parents labor in the land that they were oppressed in. So that's something to keep note. And what I was saying to my mother, we were doing this research, I said, look, if we look at the life of Marcus Garvey, which is very visible to the public, what I started to do is parallel the movements of Marcus Garvey to my great grandparents. And the reason is he's coming from Jamaica. He's born the same year as my great grandfather, which is 1887. And he's a young man coming of age in this time, right? So if you look at the movements of Marcus, it can help you to understand how the place was kind of freed up for the children of those who were enslaved to make moves. So even though it was difficult for me to like understand why and how they would leave a young child less than 2 years old, when you begin to look at what they may have felt they were faced with, maybe somewhere in their thought, like many did, it was they're going to go to another place and establish themselves economically and possibly either send back monies or come back. So what was I going to say? So in the case of Marcus, when you look at Marcus Garvey, you see that he's going early on to the Caribbean. He's going to Cuba. Did he go to Cuba? I think he went to Costa Rica. He ended up going to Panama. It's also interesting to note that at that time in Panama, there is a huge American sponsored project where a lot of workers are needed. It's the same thing if you are looking in America and you see that steel industry is popping up in Detroit, then all of the people who are coming from the South and different places, they're flooding into these zones because of economic opportunity. Right. So we see that same thing in the factories of Detroit. We see some of it when New York is being built and they need construction workers. We see it in railroads when the railroads are being built and you need people to go in and do wherever there's work in a society or some type of big project. It kind of attracts a lot of people. And so needless to say, my maternal grandparents were attracted to the promise of better wages, I guess, right? And so they leave. They leave. My grandmother, she leaves and goes to Panama. And my grandfather, I have a theory, great grandfather, I have a theory about him. And I surmise that the Panamanian service wasn't appealing. That's what I said to my mother. I was like, I don't think he wanted to go to Panama to do no hard labor, right? I tried to keep my theories out of the series, but since this is the live, and again, I dropped the link in the box for those who may be interested. I theorized that, I don't know, I was just getting the feeling like, he wasn't trying to do no hard labor in Panama, right? And so ultimately we see him pop up in New York City, which at the time, New York City in the early 1900s is popping. the area where he ultimately ends up, you're going to see the Harlem Renaissance coming out of that area. So you had thousands of people from the Caribbean actually making their way into Harlem. And evidence of this is, again, Marcus Garvey, after he goes to England and after he started making a little bit of beef down there in Central America, he ends up coming to America, right? And he finds his way right dead smack in this movement that's happening. And he's having these conversations about Du Bois and about other people and about how they're looking at this liberation movement, right? So if you look at the movement of Marcus Garvey, I looked at the movement of Marcus Garvey and I was able to understand my ancestors a little better. But on this channel, I think I talked about, and I'm not going to stay too long. This is a live. I see everybody's a little bit quiet, so we're going to let it be what it is. On the live, I talked about a while ago about Cali House, which was a reparations movement. I think I talked about this when I was doing a lot of ADOS conversation. And I talked about Cali House when I came across the research that before Marcus Garvey comes, there was a reparations movement in America with thousands of people all across, the country of melanated people appealing to the U.S. government to get reparations. And the reason I came across that is because when the ADOS and FBA conversation was at the height, people were trying to make it as if like those who actually experienced slavery didn't try to do this for themselves and failed. And so I came across, or was sabotaged. I came across Cali House and the reparations movement. Let me see what the name of the movement was again. Hold on. Everything is coming full circle. I have the book with Cali House. That was her name. And she worked with another man, but essentially they did the same thing that they ended up doing to Marcus, which is they hamstringed the movement. They tried to say that they tried to get her on mail fraud. And what they were doing, they weren't just sitting and waiting for help. They were pooling their monies and having burial funds and doing a lot of things. Let me pull this up for you guys so that you can see. You see, this got me a little bit into research mode. And, I know people would rather possibly be listening to me comment on the madness that is existing. But after a while, that stuff is maddening and I got to take a break. So here we are. Let me see here. Hold on one second. Here. I realize that sometimes the stuff that I do can be a bit much, but it is what it is. This is Cali House here. This is the woman. It was a melanated woman, and the struggle for reparations. So that you see, I'm not blowing smoke. So by the time Marcus comes, let me click this real quick so you can see. It was a woman who was she was championing and she was out in front championing the thought of hold on. Let me stop sharing for a second. Let me clear up some of these tabs. This is a bit much. Hold on. Let me see if you guys can see 1 second. It's all interconnected. And that's kind of, at that time, that's kind of what I was trying to convey. If you go back to some of my older videos, was that there's so much history that we don't know. It behooves us to just be easy. It behooves us to be easy because we're speaking from something that we actually don't know the fullness of. Let me just click this one because for some reason that one is not coming up. So here is Cali House. That was her name. She died in 1828. She was a leader of National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association. So basically, they wanted pensions for those who were enslaved. One of the first organizations to campaign for reparations for slavery. So when FBA rolled around and ADOS rolled around and acting as if this didn't happen before, I'm like, this very much happened before. And if anybody had the right to receive, it would have been them at this time. But again, that wasn't the desire. And here she is. She was born in 1861. She was a little girl when slavery ended. But I want to see if they put in the part where what happens is when they try to dismember her people, the group, basically not her people, but the group. What happens is a lot of those people were looking when they realized, okay, America is not going to give us what it is that we deserve. Marcus came in on that note. So a lot of UNIA people, a lot of the people that he garnered was already there. They just needed another cause to get behind. And that's kind of how it happens. So you see here the U.S. Postal Service accusation of fraud culminated in 1916 with House's arrest. That's the same thing they did to Marcus. So when Marcus came and stepped in the stead and said back to Africa, Africa for Africans, they were like, oh, we don't want you to do that either. So the U.S. government didn't want to give reparations to melanated people, descendants of slaves. They didn't want you to leave, so they sabotaged, Marcus telling the people, hey, just go back to Liberia, which, by the way, was a colonist project put on by the U.S. government. So there's a lot of confusion. My point being, looking at this time point in history is important to look for. What is important, and is important for me to understand how my foreparents were moving around. I just want to show briefly Marcus Garvey's early years, because these are the early years. He's born in the same year as my great grandfather, right? My great grandfather was born in the September of that year. If you followed the story, Hubert, my great grand uncle, was born in 87 of that year, which is 1887. All of them are basically age mates. But as we jump down to Marcus's early career, when we see that he starts moving around, economic hardships in Jamaica led to a growing immigration from the island. So when I was trying to figure out, well, why would they leave? There were a lot of things going on historically at that time. There were a lot of things going on historically at that time. And we see Marcus, even the young generation, the 20-somethings, are like, okay, what are we going to stay here for? So when some of them had children and they didn't have any means to support these children, they made the difficult decision to leave in hopes that it's the same way we see people coming across the border now. Some of them leave their family and their children behind in hopes that they will be able to sustain them and that the sacrifice is going to be worth it. So in the case of Marcus Garvey, he went to Costa Rica to a banana plantation. And what's weird is that they were going to other places like Cuba, like Costa Rica, like Panama, to do hard labor, but it was hard labor that they felt was worth it because they were getting paid more. So for instance, in the case of my uncle, I saw 15 cents an hour. Imagine 15 cents an hour. And I'm like, what? He's making less than $6 a day if he's working 40 hours a week. $6 a week, my apologies, right? And so just to see what they were willing to do, because there wasn't any reliable or promising economic future for the country at that time, it just shows you how people make choices. And this is not just, it was back then. This is even to this day, right? This is even to this day for different people for different reasons. So, hold on. That is basically what I wanted to share. I could go in, but, I don't want to do too much. That's just how all of the research is coming together. And it's interesting. I'll put the link one more time, but it's interesting just to see how, like I said to my mother, when I'm doing the research and she's going to look, and I say to her, it's weird because you kind of have to, my experience, I can explain from my experience. I was going off of intuition, because if they're within us, meaning DNA wise, then we can be guided towards the right documentation and the right paperwork. And that's kind of how I found a lot of the things, the little bit of information that we did know, plus being open to not preempting the situation, if you can understand what I'm saying, like trying to make it be what it is not. It's like putting a puzzle piece together. That's exactly what it is. Sometimes we get a piece of the puzzle and we don't know where it goes. It doesn't make sense with the narrative that they told us. It is out of pocket, and all you do is just put a question mark. This is how I study Torah. This is how some people are like, I can only show you how I do it because I don't have fully formulated doctrines until I have researched the snot out of something. That's how I've studied the Bible, how I study Torah, how I study history. Is if I don't know, I don't know. And if I have a question, I'll just put a question mark. And if I have a hunch, I'll just write it down, put a question mark, and maybe come back to it at a later time. You say you tried the link. Let me click the link. I didn't see anybody in the I'm not sure why. Should be some, right? So sometimes when people want something to be something so bad, and this comes down to present day, right? This doesn't just have to be about the past. It's about our relationships. It's about our relationship with ourselves. It's about our purpose. When we force it because we think it's supposed to be this thing, this is the purpose, right? We tend to we can miss, let's say, a lot of what we could learn if only we allowed it to I'm sorry, become what it is. And so that's kind of how I move through this information. And so if anybody out there has any questions or they need a jumpstart, like I said, I have on my site where you can do a soul session, which is just a conversation with me about this is specifically was for writing your own book, your autobiographical novel, because I find that in sometimes just having the conversation will spark so much. Like I said, keep a notebook, have discussions. Don't be afraid of exploring the unknown, right? There's a lot of stuff we don't know. There's a lot of stuff that they did not tell us. There's a lot of things that's why I did the conversation on this channel, Grandma's Secrets, right? We had the conversation. I don't even want to misremember his name. So I'm going to go over here and get his name so I could tell you his name. But we had that conversation before. Hold on. Hold on. We had that conversation because there's a lot of things that we were not told. But Dr. Rick Wallace was his name. My apologies. My apologies. Let me put this link in the box. I don't know if you guys could hear that. Could you guys hear that part of the video right there? Were you able to hear that audio? Let me go ahead over here and see if you were able to hear the audio. Let me go and see if you were able to hear that audio. Mm-hmm. Did you guys, somebody who's listening live, let me know if you were able to hear that audio. No? Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to pull that back just a little bit for those who don't remember that episode. Again, these conversations we've been having, I don't know how much we're listening, but we've been having them. Let me just pull it back and we'll listen to a little bit of this and then, we're going to wrap it up.
In the book Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs, she speaks about the vulnerability of the slave girl in the master's house. And basically she runs away trying to avoid being sexually abused, right? But she goes into the fate of many, especially if you're fair or if you're pretty or whatever the case may be. It became a curse to be pretty and fair during slave time. And to what you're saying, the men are seeing these young, pretty and fair women, and the only thing that they can think about is violating her.
And the thing is, and just
were you able to hear that? Let me know if you can hear that now. We have Ronald who has joined us, but let me go ahead and pull him up so he can share his thoughts, and then I'll play it a little more if you heard it. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, when you were talking about when you first got on, we talking about sharing your like experience and basic research. Mine is kind of similar to yours, Mona. I hadn't went as extensive, of course, but I always been wondering like where my folks come from. I even boiled it down to like looking at facial features, phenotypes of people, and I've been seeing a lot more. Most Congolese people and Cameroon people have similar facial features. To me and my dad, not my mom, but me and my dad have the round and the square head at the same time. That's Cameroon and Congo. And I wanted to get deeper into like the kind of everything, like the personality traits, the interests, the music, the food, even the spirit that like generational curses or generational spirits that are attached to like people from Congo. I wanted to get deeper into that. So I'm glad you're doing this because it kind of pushed me forward in the digging through my family history, tribe history, all of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's interesting that you note that. Yesterday, I came across some paperwork from the 1700s in Jamaica where they were actually, maybe I'll come and share it another time. They actually had all of the names of the people, how old they were, and what tribe they got them from. So they had Igbo, and they had the Congo, and they had Comoranti, and they had all of these different tribes, right? So when people keep saying, and I've said this before and I got heat for it, but it's whatever. When people keep saying that Black people are this monolithic group called Black people, that's not historically factual, right? And the differences exhibited in the way in which people, even in today's space and time, click up, right? Because that is DNA. What is collective is the trauma that the people sustained. Right. And so I think that would be helpful when we move through this information to know that it started off with those differences. And so some people you'll see once they're no longer in that struggling mode, they don't feel as though they need to support the community anymore. You know what I mean? They step away from it because they never really felt connected beyond that traumatic experience. So, yeah, but
Right,
definitely.
right. I like how you put term.
Your phone is breaking up a little bit.
I didn't. I was saying, is it clear now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello? Oh,
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was gonna say I like. Okay. I would say the term trauma.
Ronald, you breaking up, Ron. Ron's phone. Your phone is breaking up. It might be some bad reception.
Right.
Try it.
95.
Oh, you driving?
Yeah. But I'm hands free though. I'm hands free.
Okay, yeah. We're like, hey, brother, you driving on the phone? No, it's breaking up.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you better.
Okay. I like how you put the term trauma bonding because I always wonder why can't we get along at certain stages? Like we do good for maybe a few years, but then we start the bickering and fighting, and it makes sense. It goes all the way back to beyond the trauma. Our tribes might not have got along or something.
Correct. Beyond the trauma, yeah, that's exactly right. That before there was this bond, the people were, and you see it sometimes depicted in the slave movies, especially the ones that take place on ships. There are all these different people. It's like being thrown in a jail cell together. So as long as we need to escape from this jail, we're going to work together to a certain capacity. But once you're outside of that, and you no longer have that as your connective tissue, people don't necessarily have the same loyalty that you think they would have, right? And so, yeah, that trauma bonding is something that we need to look into because it's important to understand the experiences we're having.
Right. And would you go so far as to, can you still hear me clearly?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Would you go so far as to say we should look at that before. Like, I don't know, in the Torah observant movement, we kind of look at that a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, person Israelite or not like that. But just on a human standpoint, should we look at the person's background, like tribally, to see that before we date them, or even before we befriend that person? Not to discriminate, but to see what we're getting as a interactive person.
I mean, I think the elders used to do that, but because so many people have moved around and disconnected, the elders used to be like, where they people from? You know what I'm saying? The elders had that to a certain degree, but so many things have become scrambled and people have become disjointed that even if one tries to inquire, like we're having this conversation now, the people may not know genuinely. You know what I mean? They may not know where they're coming from, or it's just really at that point being observant of the overall characteristics, not necessarily tribal, but just overall. Look at the family that the person is coming from. Look at the person in different, observe them, and the person should do the same for you. Especially if it's in a capacity where somebody wants to get married or something. Take some time to observe that person before getting involved. Look at the parents, look at the siblings, and ask the appropriate questions.
Right. And so far as even dealing with them on a friendship level, like, cause that's usually what happened. I'll give you a good example, like Memphis. A lot of people talk the violence in the Memphis, they chalk it up to like gang violence or drug violence. Did you know most of the violence in Memphis is domestic?
Oh, wow.
Like, the craziness of the city, all these like psycho type crimes is domestic. It's like people that know each other, but somewhere their spirit is clashing. Somewhere something happened. You see what I'm saying? So even just the people we come in contact with, like from a day-to-day basis, even though we're not gonna get in a family history or nothing like that, but I don't know. I pick wisely of who you deal with, because you want to be more constructive with anybody you come in contact with.
That's true. Even friendships, because you can befriend the wrong people. And our parents used to say, friend and company can lead you astray. Show me a friend company and I'll tell you who you are. But we can also swap destinies to a certain degree energetically with people because we're there with them. Right? So it wasn't supposed to be for you. In the same way, it can go positively. If you're around the right people, you can get introduced, right? And you're just, quote, in the right place at the right time because you happen to be around the right people. So it can go both ways, where your destiny can change, or it can be there can be shortcomings because you were on the right track, but you associated with the wrong people. So I agree. Friends need to be on that list too, because they're highly influential about the choices that we make.
Right. Because that's how I don't want to seem too, judgmental or discriminative. But that's something I really do think about sometimes. Like, I wonder what this person's family history is. I wonder, I wonder who, really, because you think about, I wonder, it's just like if you ask, I wonder who this person is. That's a part of who they are, their family history, their tribe, all of that.
Right.
And we don't have the luxury of doing it like as if we was in a like an African setting, or even just a tribal setting. I say a tribal setting. We don't have that luxury of doing it today because, like you said, stuff is so scrambled.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you judge a person by their character, but it's like, how late is too late? Once you start noticing bad personality traits, you ease away from them. You know what I'm saying? But you could have told that easily if the cultural structure was still intact. That's one thing they took from us in slavery. Like, I know Africans who could just tell, like, just by my facial features, where I'm from, just by my character, where I'm from, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I wish I was able to do that more readily.
Right. And I think it's just what you're doing now is just being consciously aware, right? That's where it begins, because we don't have the advantages of being socially structured in a way that you can directly walk past the great granny's house and know, you know what I mean? You don't have necessarily the stories of what they did aforetime. So because we don't have those things, we are kind of walking blind in this situation. But this is where discernment comes in. This is where prayer comes in. This is where just being consciously aware of that we are a people to a certain degree that have been destroyed, and B, there are those who are aware and trying to progress, and then there are those who are not aware and are just looking to trip up other people. So we have to be able to differentiate, because none of us have arrived. You understand what I'm saying? All of us are still fighting and making our way through the muck and the mire, so to say.
Right. I feel you.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
another thing I want to ask you is, doing it so far, like you said, having the discernment, relying on the Most High, that would put us in that direction, so to speak. But systems that kind of help with, I wouldn't say weeding a person in or to your life or out of your life, but that help with kind of it copes where if this person is not right for your journey, a system that would help that. Would you say that more Torah observance, or even in my experience, I think Torah observance and I've been noticing the Islamic world has a very good coding system for that. Even though not most of our people are not really on both of those. What's your opinion about having a cushion system to where if I clash with a person, if it's not constructive, it don't become deconstructive.
So that, I'm
You know
trying
what
to
I'm
see if
saying?
are you talking about a system that the individual puts in place?
Not so much individual, but a community system. Another good example is like, okay, what's the guy name? Nelly Fuller. Nelly Fuller says, basically, if you can't deal with black people constructively, you shouldn't be around them at all. I don't believe that, but I believe if you can't be constructive with another black person, how do you keep it from going deconstructive? What do you have in place? What community system do you have in place to where it doesn't become deconstructive?
But that part
You
I'm
see what
not
I'm saying?
sure. I mean, collective wise, there's so many different factions. The most I see that people have immediate control is over their own personal space and their own personal lives. And I mean, like community wise, this really depends on what the person's going to adhere to, because like we said earlier, there's so many different branches and offshoots and thought processes that to try to collectively say, if this happens, then we're going to prevent this. You know what I mean? It
Right.
historically it hasn't happened. So I think the most control that we the people have is over our immediate surroundings and what we choose to accept and what the standards that we set for ourselves, right? Because there's a lot going on every level that it just really takes time. It's just a very tangled, you know what I mean? It's very tangled. It's very just confusing. So it's just like trying to undo one thing at a time is what I'm saying before we can get to, because the reality is that people probably won't even, like, who are you? Like they said to Moses, like, who made you servant over us? That's kind of the thought process when we try to govern outside of our immediate spaces.
Okay. Yeah, I feel what you're saying. Do you believe it? Do you believe community organization is a wise step? Seeing that most of us are bonded, I would say most of us, but a lot of us are bonded by trauma bonds. It a community organization like Marcus Garvey had UNIA. Do you think that would be a wise decision for us, in your
I
opinion?
think I think actionable steps to real community issues is wise, and people who vibrate or energetically with that goal, it will make achieving it easier, as opposed to trying to galvanize everybody and then try to organize everybody. So, for instance, if the people in the community are passionate about dealing with, you know, the hunger of small children, and they they organize around that. That's an action. That's something actionable. I think when
Okay.
because we have as a holistically as a people been only overstimulated by drama, or when something has reached its height. So somebody gets gunned down. Now people are galvanized because that's the level of stimuli that it takes for people to fall in line. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so you
Right.
have to. People have been overexposed to that much uh, volatility that everyday problems are probably like, that happens every day. I know people that happens to. But the people in the community who see that as something that they want to do, you'd be better off just linking with them, right? And so that you can exponentially get things done, as opposed to saying, hey, we need everybody together to get things done. Because then you're just going to be wasting a lot of energy trying to get everybody on the same page.
Right. And you're gonna be clashing those trauma bonds too.
Yeah. So it's like pick a topic
Yeah.
people may feel passionate about, and then those people who also feel passionate about it will come together and then do something. And that's just my thoughts. That's just not to say if it's yay or nay, but those are just my thoughts.
That makes sense though. That makes sense because that kind of gets out of the way of the trauma bonds. Like you thinking, you know what I'm saying, you cohesive with this organization and then you fall out for no reason. Whereas if it's over a cause, you're gonna see the cause through. You're gonna see that your problem is solved. And then maybe okay, be friends with people, cool. And if not, y'all go y'all separate way. You got a clean slate or a good record of getting a cause done, not just a entire organization you just forced into.
So when you get into the entire, even like within the church, people are gathering because they have a similar thought process. But then you have one set of people who like gather all the power onto themselves, and then it becomes the haves and the have-nots, and then it becomes that what you said. You know what I mean? All of those things can quickly creep in and do when people haven't learned to govern their own selves, right? So it's been done many, many times, and it quickly can go south. Let's just say.
Yeah, yeah, I see. I see.
But thank you definitely for tuning in and sharing your thoughts and giving your feedback. And I pray that you find more information on your journey of learning about your family history.
Most definitely, most definitely. I keep you and the viewers posted on what I find.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for tuning in.
You welcome. Shalom.
All right. All right. We coming to the 1 hour mark. That was the voice of Brother Ron calling in. So thank you for that. I'm gonna go ahead and wind down at this time. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop it in the blocks. Like I said, I gave the websites that I used to do this search. It was predominantly done with the exception of the pictures that we found on familysearch.org, but you also have ancestry.com. Right now, I think they have a 14-day trial. I would, before signing up, just gather the data. I would go in one direction. So for those who say I'm interested, I would sit down, write on the quadrant, write yourself in the middle, and then put 4 quadrants, right? Your mother's people, father's people, and your mother's father, and your mother's mother, father's mother, father's mother, your grandparents, basically. And then whichever if you're brand new to this, whichever ones you know the most about, they may be the easiest to get started with. So whichever grandparent or parent you have more access to and you know the most about, like when they moved, where they moved from, what their name was, when they were born, then that would help to begin your search for documentation, right? So it's kind of like to have a bit of a plan before you jump out there in the water. So if you have any questions or comments that I could answer, I'll be happy to do so. But with that said, thank everybody for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and share, and all of that good, nice stuff. And I'm going to take a little break before I get back to some of my normal everyday commentary. All right. Everybody have a blessed day.